AgWeek weather is sponsored by Bremer Bank. Connect with a banker today at bremer.com.
Are these cooler temperatures here to stay? Here's our AgriWeather outlook.
At the end of July and the start of August, we got into kind of a weird sort of setup with the jet stream, and it did produce kind of an unusual weather pattern for just a week or so. I'm going to show you that, but it's been in that sense kind of a weird summer overall with the jet stream position the way it is. Probably has something to do with the way this year's La Nina, El Nino is transitioning back into La Nina. In general, I do expect the warm weather to be coming northward again. We're going to see some heat and some humidity up into the northern plains and upper Midwest, and we're going to see a little bit less rainfall, but we're not going to see it get as hot as it was in July over much of the far north especially, and I don't expect the rains to cut off completely. Now here's what we're talking about. Last week, we had this little strange northern branch of the jet stream that went way up north and then curved around a low before moving out in a more typical pattern. That brought a significant cool down into the northern plains. Now as we start this week, it is beginning to warm up a little bit, and that will continue. Warmer weather will build back into the Dakotas and Minnesota. We're going to see a lot of 70s and a few days maybe in the lower 80s this week, but we'll eventually see that warmer weather start building northward. And by midweek, we'll be back to fairly typical summertime temperatures, except the northeast will still be fairly cool. Here's that northern branch of the jet still lingering, and then here's the main primary southern branch. And so you can see we're going to see a fairly typical August weather pattern with patches of weather well into the 90s and a lot of 80s and not much else over the United States, except for maybe some cooly weather in the Pacific Northwest. As we get toward the weekend, some cool weather will have built down into the northern part of Canada, but we're going to see the heat pretty stagnant into the western part of the high plains and fairly warm on the eastern part, and a lot of this will be somewhat humid, and that's going to allow us for some scattered thunderstorms at times, so we're not going to see the rains completely cut off, but I think in general they'll be focused a little bit further south than they had been. So for this first week of the forecast, August 11th through 17th, scattered thunder showers from the northern plains through the western part of the Corn Belt. Southeastern states, a lot of this is tropical moisture and scattered sea breeze type thunderstorms. The west does look mostly dry. And then for the second week of the period, kind of the same areas. I do think the rains up north will maybe shift a little further north, and the best concentration of thunderstorm weather will actually be in Canada, though there will be scattered storms dropping down into the northern plains. Western part of the Corn Belt, I think, will settle down a little bit and get a little bit drier as we go through the mid to latter part of the month of August, and we'll continue to see some tropical action and some fairly wet weather over the southeastern states. Most of the west, next 2 weeks look quite dry.